Hello students, this is the part 2 of the chapter Disaster Management. Now in the last part we learned about different disasters. Now all those disasters when it happens, after the disaster takes place, it is important to plan the proper rehabilitation of the people so that we cannot face more problems. So, making plans to face the disaster and developing capacity to do so is called as disaster management. Now, disaster management is only possible through the community participation. Whenever a disaster happens at a particular place, the first people that can actually give help to the persons who are in danger are the community people, the local people. So, it is important that community participation takes place. So, disaster management work for these community participation also. Now, natural or man-made disaster, any type of disaster can take place. But it is important to make plan to face the disaster, to face all the crucial event that has happened in the disaster. So the emergency planning and the management is to be done before any calamity strike and also after the calamity strike. This is all the factors come under disaster management. Now, there are various precautions to be taken before in the case of any natural or man-made disaster. Now, these precautions can be taken by anyone. So, you should carefully watch the news on the TV and radio. You should also keep your battery full. Also, keep a check on the warnings which are issued by the meteorological department, usually in the newspaper or in the radio channels or in the news channel. They show that today it will be raining heavily. So please don't go out. So we should listen to those warnings. Also, you can even check on the website of www.imd.government.in that if any type of warnings are given. If a person is living in the hilly side areas, then there are chances of landslides. So those person should stay away from the foothill areas. Also, if any person lives near the coastal areas, so in case of floods, those people should go to a protective place. And also when it is flood, when it is raining heavily, people should not wander here and there and instead should stay safe in their houses. One must also ensure that whenever it is an earthquake or any other disaster, that you have the proper information with you so that you can protect yourself from any kind of disaster. So all these things are there that one must do to prevent themselves from disaster. A very simple example is these days it is important to keep a fire extinguisher at every place so that if any fire is being caused, so fire extinguisher can be used to extinguish the fire. So one must also know how to use a fire extinguisher. So these are all the things, the preventive and the remedial measures. Also these days there are many trainings for first aid. So people can get trainings for first aid. They can even help if a person is suffering from accident or even in any kind of disaster. So these are few preventive measures that can be taken by each and every one of us. Now, children, if any kind of disaster takes place or any accident takes place, even at home also, if a very simple accident takes place, so one must know how to use a first aid. What is actually a first aid? It is an immediate aid which can be given even before any medical help arrives and is known as a first aid. Now, it is also essential that during disaster, people's life can be saved, and this can be done through learning first aid or having first aid. Now what is there inside a first aid box? So it can contain cotton rolls, dressing, pair of scissors, Dettol, Savlon, soap, even some adhesive plaster. There are some tablets also like crocin and other painkillers. Then it should also have electrolyte powder, because anyone can suffer from dehydration, so electrolyte powder plays an important role. Urine eye drops can also be there. Bernol or any other type of ointments are there. So all these things are there in a first aid kit. Now let us see what first aid can be given when a person suffer from burn. So now, first thing, there can be two types of burns. It can be minor burns, which can lead to very small minor burns, or there can be serious burns. Let us first talk about serious burns. So what first thing you have to do is you have to cover the wound with a sterilized cloth. It is very important that the cloth should be clean. If any person is wearing jewelries and other things, those things should not be touched. You should not try to remove those things, because it can happen that because of the burn, the metal might have melted and it has got stuck to the skin. So the metal, if you try to remove it, the skin can also come out. So as we are not expert in those things, so we should not try to remove all those things. If you have any ointment, okay, now it is important that whenever it is a serious burn, so oily ointment should not be applied. Also, the clothes which are there, do not try to pull the clothes of those person. Let the professional do those things. Then what can other do is that if the person is conscious, try to give him some water. The water will help. And also coffee or other drink, those like hot drink should not be given. And the person should be given the medical help as soon as possible. And the best thing that anyone can provide is the emotional help. So you can tell that person not to worry, everything will be okay. So all those things can be done. Now, what first aid you can give when a person suffers from minor burns? So, whenever person suffers from minor burns, for example, in kitchen and all, so what we can do is the burnt part should be kept under cold water or running water. This will help to reduce the swelling or the reddishness which is there because of the burn. Also, the victim, if the person is suffering, the person who is suffering from the burn should be given water to drink so that the person relaxes. Oily ointment should be avoided. In any type of burns, oily ointment should be avoided. All one can do is you can use an antiseptic swab, and then you can just clean the wound, and dressing can be done to cover the wound so that any infection could not take place in that wound. These were the few first aid that you can give to a person who is suffering from minor burns. Next is a sunstroke. Now, what you can do when a person suffer from sunstroke? This is very common in summer season, as the body loses lot amount of water and the other minerals are also lost. So there is dehydration which takes place, and because of which a person can suffer from sunstroke. So if a person is suffering from sunstroke, you can actually help that person. So the patient, it can be given a first of all, you have to take that person to a cool place in a shade so that he is no more in the sun. Secondly, you can give him something to drink. If he is unconscious, then only you can give him something to drink. And also, main important thing is lie the person on his side. Do not let the person lie in the straight position, so that whenever he is lying in the slight position, the air flow can be increased. So these are the few remedial measures. If a person is suffering from sunstroke, that means the body is not having water, then we can give the person electrolyte powder, which is mixed in the water for the rehydration process. The minerals and the water which is lost can be regained. Then we can even uh, tell the person to relax and give them something cold to drink, and even wipe off his face and neck with the cold cloth which is soaked in cold water. Another thing what we can do is, if it is a serious sunstroke, we can shift the patient to the hospital so that the person can get immediate help. Next is what remedial measure we can do when a person is suffering from a snake bite. Now, one thing you have to remember that snake bites are not very common in the urban areas, but it is very common in the rural areas. So, if a person is suffering from snake bite, but one thing is also important that all snakes are not poisonous. Only there are few snakes like cobra, viper, and the kraits who are poisonous and can lead to death. But unknowingly, you should not kill any type of snake. So, when you get a bite from a non-poisonous snake, so usually a person go into a shock and then nothing happens, the person is normalized. But when a poisonous snakes bite you, then the person can die. Now sometimes people even die because of the non-poisonous snake. Now what remedial measures we can do for snake bite? So first of all, we can give emotional support to the victim. We can tell the victim not to worry, not to panic. Then second is you need to wash the wound, washing the wound with water. This is the second step that you should take. Then another thing is that you need to tie a tight cloth above the wound so that the poison does not reach to the vital organs. For example, our heart is a vital organ, so that it does not reach to our vital organ, and try to get medical help as soon as possible so that the poison can be removed from the body at the earliest. Next is a dog bite. Now, the dog bites can be dangerous if the dog is not vaccinated. There are various vaccinations which are given to the dog for the anti-rabies vaccine, which we call it, which is very essential to give it for every dog. And if those vaccines are not given to the dog, then the bite is very dangerous. And if the after the bite, the immediate care is not taken, if the medical help is not given, then the person can suffer from rabies and can even die. Now, what we can do as the remedial measure if the person has suffered from a dog bite? So, first of all, we need to clean the wound, and the wound should be washed with a solution of potassium permanganate, or you can even use any antiseptic also. The wound should also be covered with a clean and a dry cloth so that it does not lead to any type of infection. As the wound is deep, so infections can cause, and if the wound gets infection, then it becomes very difficult to cure the wound. Second is to take the help of the doctor. Vaccines are there that should be given. Those are the anti-vaccine, and the care of the person should be taken. So these things can be done as a remedial measure. One can also get anti-rabies vaccine if the person is having a pet as a dog or any other animal. So those people take the anti-rabies vaccine.